way we are as a nation. Maybe we are more built on personalities and affiliations.
No,
which
it's not,
It's not how we are.
Michael,
It's not how we are. It's how you want us
how
to
we have
sound.
shaped it.
Yeah.
How you.
Is it what we have shaped?
It's
how
in
probably
the
the media
interest
has
of the
shaped.
politicians to be based on personality, because it makes them very flexible to any issue. You can't hold them account to any issue. They can move from one issue to another within a day if they want to. But if they were based on a party that stood for something, then you could challenge them based on what their party stands for. And we don't. What we have is manifestos that are released, and every party will always release a manifesto.
Which exist on paper.
Yeah, but that does not mean this is their stand. They
And
can
actually, we
always switch.
scrutinize most of those manifestos. They are more or less similar. It's almost
Yes.
cut
They are
and paste.
copy-pasted, yeah.
They're copy-pasted. So, Crispus.
Michael, I think we still have a long way to go in this country as a media fraternity, because we must appreciate the fact that the media is a business, and you must actually, in a way, find money of running your own institutions and paying your salaries. So what I'm trying to say is that because we still depend on various sources to enable us run our daily activities, it is very difficult for us to start now highlighting certain issues. For instance, when you look at government advertises about 60%. So the media revenue, 60% of it comes from government. So there are certain things that you cannot expect from the media. For instance, going tooth and nail to attack the government on certain things. But having said that,
let me ask you to hold that thought,
yes.
Yankem, because we had Honorable Martha Karua yesterday, and one of the things she was very vocal about is the fact that the media seems to be taking steps back. And this, of course, is in light with what you're saying, with government, giving a huge stake of advertising, and there is the money side of media running. And she had a lot to say regarding how the media is running. And let's just get a clip of what she had to say, then we can take it from there in terms of media now taking steps backwards in keeping the government in account. So let's just hear what Martha had to say.
Even today, the media is largely under capture. You see?
What do you mean by that? When capture?
I say under capture because if you're going to be watching your bottom line to decide whether a story is feasible, and if journalists are going to be sacked for expressing themselves like happened in the nation, and like is happening with many people getting sacked, you are under capture, because what it means is that every media house will be looking over its shoulder, because the greatest revenue you earn in advertising is from the government. So the media gets arm twisted. And it's so sad that the days of the new constitution is when the media is getting twisted more. During the days of Kanu, when we were agitating for political pluralism, the media was so bold. The Nation and Standard were partners.
So, Yankem, does that validate what you're saying? Is it true that the media, to use her words, has been captured? Is under capture?
First of all, I think it is important for me to put a disclaimer. I did not watch that show yesterday, and I don't work for Martha Karua, and I'm not known to Martha Karua. But it is critical for us to appreciate the fact that her thinking is actually in line with what I'm talking about. That is the reality, and I think it is the elephant in the room.
Okay.
I would add one caveat to that, which is new media. Nowadays, you don't even need a lot of money to start a news blog, and it can be more investigative than an actual Standard or a Nation or a Citizen. So as we fear the end of independence in traditional journalism, we have online journalism where people can report stories. They don't have to be censored, because you can have servers outside the country that can be shut down. They don't need to have a lot of money. It can just be you doing the reporting, and it can just be as good. We have seen many reporters in Kenya who have left traditional media to start their own small...
So are you saying the fact that Martha Karua and what Yankem was saying is that the government has a huge stake in advertising does not or should not affect us as media in terms of holding them accountable?
No, I'm saying it definitely will. It definitely will when it comes to traditional media houses that depend on that advertising. It's not just for government. I always say companies like Safaricom, East Africa Breweries will have a stronger say on what happens in terms of editorial content. But that doesn't mean that the story cannot get out there. Nowadays, we're seeing stories getting out there without the need of traditional media. And some of these stories end up being taken up by traditional media who do the analysis, who do the context of all this, of all that's happening. So I'm not so worried about it. I think new media gives us an opportunity to do stronger stories with more detailed and without fear of censorship.
Professor, do you think we're under capture?
Under capture, but then there is an impression that there is some sort of alignment towards some extremes that, you know, I was reading one of the local dailies on Sunday, and the headline was Malindi and Kericho, or rather Kericho, decide. Then the cover photographs were Gideon Moi addressing a multitude of supporters in Kericho, and Raila addressing, you know, the
Supporters in Malindi.
Yeah, and I had an impression that that was really implying that Kericho, or rather Kanu in Kericho is not, they were not working for Jubilee. They were some sort of opposition. So when you juxtapose that picture with that of ODM, then the get out there would be that, well, this paper distantly would be, you know, aligned towards a particular, you know, coalition or a particular
Side of,
side of the divide, as it were. The government, yes, advertises in these local dailies, but then the media, I strongly believe the media has a role to play. Besides the classic, you know, function of the media of informing, educating, and entertaining, we are now moving towards media working for society, socialization, democracy, independence, justice, among other things. So the media is a very strong pillar of democracy alongside, of course, the judiciary and the legislature and the executive, as it were. So the media cannot say that, well, now that the government has a stake in this, therefore we cannot propagate issues.
But practically, doesn't it limit the space that media has to operate freely when the funding, or a big chunk of the funding, is coming from government? With 60% advertising, that's huge.
Yes, it does. Then I would wish to agree with what Kilemi said, that, well, in that point, we need to have other new media establishments. We have this alternative media, which does not have to be necessarily the social media or the new media, as it were. But then even you can have a sister newspaper which is going to give an alternative to what the mainstream newspaper is doing, that is going to cover stories on a more balanced and objective way. So as the trained journalist, you would want to not to be swayed by what the government does, but then you also need to go away and be creative and innovative, so that you can, people are going to be relying on you for information. People are going to be relying on you for socialization. How do you socialize? How do you get to bring up a generation through the media? What are our kids learning through the media? Right? So we cannot hide in the government supporting our establishments in, you know, probably not doing the right thing.
Okay,
I think, Michael, I would wish to disagree with Kilemi and Professor here when they talk about new media stepping in for the mainstream media. That is something that cannot happen. We cannot fill the gap. New media cannot actually fill the gap of mainstream media. I think mainstream media can be able to liberate themselves by coming up with alternative ways of generating their own revenue so that they are independent.
So he's agreeing
Because
with me.
I don't think so. Not necessarily. When you talk about new media filling in the gap of mainstream, you
Not
only
necessarily,
need
but then supplementing.
supplementing. Fine. Now you are talking. When you talk about supplementing,
Thank you.
because you only need to go to the villages and try to do a survey and find out how many people consume actually new media. Probably 1 out of 10, or maybe none.
Or even have
depending,
access.
Yeah. So these are things that we must now start looking at in a very serious way. And going back to Kericho, I think the other story angle that you guys should have considered is the fact, and especially yesterday being an International Women's Day, is the fact that none of the candidates were women. I don't know what is happening in Malindi and Kericho. Is it a pointer to what is going to happen? because even during the 2013 general election, very few women actually contested for the position of senator. Even when you look at the composition of the Senate, the ones who are there, majority of them, if not actually all of them, are nominated. So this is a serious thing that we must.
If I may add something about his point about new media. New media is a future. If you look abroad, the most popular, the most strong media institutions like the New York Times, Washington Post, all those have lost their readership to online new media, and that's going to happen in Kenya. But our internet penetration has not yet reached the point where that would be. But did you know the biggest source of news in the world right now is Facebook? It's not even...
it depends with how you look at news.
Let me make my point. So what I'm trying to say is new media is going to be a source of information. It might not be the source for transmitting that information, but it will be a source of original reporting. And from there, it will trickle down to the regular person in the rural areas, in the urban areas, maybe. So that's the future. So we need to stop being afraid of this idea of independence when it comes to traditional media. There are other means. My point is that there are other means of getting news out there. As long as people want to access the news, which is what we're getting in Kenya. We're getting a very strong news culture. People want to get news, want to get independent news. Somebody will find a way of giving it to them.
Okay.
Somebody will find a way of giving
But
it.
again, I think contextualizing and comparing, say, the US and Kenya would somehow be an imbalance, given that penetration here is very low.
It's very low. I think we are at about, I don't know, I think 10%, and most of it is actually Facebook traffic. But that's the future. That's where we're heading. That's the direction we're heading as internet becomes more affordable and smartphones become more regular.
Okay. Going back to government funding and its stake in media and the fact that it has a huge chunk that it contributes, Crispus, I'd be interested to hear. We know that the recently started an advertising agency, which was, of course, going to limit or decide who advertises and how. Do you think that is a way of the government trying to sort of muzzle and demasculate the media?
I'm not so sure whether I want to read malice in that, but it actually goes back to what we are saying. When the government establishes its own advertising agency and ensures that it is independent, I think that is a lauded statement. And this is why I would insist that the media, it is time you guys actually started thinking of how to generate your own revenue, because by doing that you have your independence and you can now start pursuing the stories that are relevant in society without looking over your shoulder, without probably a governor calling you from somewhere and telling you that if you run my story on corruption, I'm going to pull
advertising off you.
Absolutely. So I think that is something that we need to start now giving thought to.
Okay.